everybody. How's it going? We're going to have to get you to sit somewhere else because I don't know if you noticed this, the Michigan Advance, they keep taking these side profile shots. Take issue. I'm starting to worry that maybe the Michigan Advance is pandering to their Democrat donors a little bit, because I read a story yesterday where they said that Whitney Brinks holds regularly scheduled press conferences. I don't think that's true. I don't think it's regularly scheduled, but Eggert, we're happy you're here. Welcome back. And you got to see this picture up here if you haven't. Up here, we hung it up last week. You have Governor Whitmer, President Trump, Leader Nesbitt, and myself at the big Selfridge Air National Guard Day, where President Trump announced a new fighter mission for Michigan. Something I think he just does off the record. He's on every channel every day, but what I didn't realize, it's so early in the morning I didn't see it, but I have some new monitoring software. I'm seeing all of it. So great job you're doing, Tim. Just wanted to, we got some slides today. I know the press likes the slides, so they like that one. I just wanted to point out some things and by the way, this is not a regularly scheduled press conference. I think since we do this every week, it might be a regularly scheduled press conference. If they just do it 2 or 3 times total in a year, that's not a regularly scheduled press conference. But we know that Whitney Brinks and the Democrats are budget that's been sitting in the Senate chamber for many, many months and weeks. And this is what it does. It actually, look at this. This is from the analysis, the nonpartisan analysis. It maintains current year appropriation for at-risk funding. So Democrats try to say that the House budget, oh, they couldn't hear me when I did that? Well, I don't need that. I'll just not do it again. All right. What the at-risk funding does is it puts more money into the it puts more money into the school districts that are not well off financially, because what we see is that we need to put more money and more investment in those lower income districts in order to help those schools get to where they need to on education. That's why the House budget actually keeps investments in the House budget on education in the school districts that need it the most. And I looked through this list, and a lot of these are in Democrat districts, places like Dearborn, where making big investments in the lower income districts, they benefit the most. And we really want to help lift some of those schools up so that all kids are educated, not just the ones in the wealthy districts. And then with this extra funding for special and then they're making very large generalizations and they're lying. That's why I think it's important to show you we fund at risk in the House budget and we fund special education, and we actually increase it by 127 million. So I think that's important. Did you have the next slide? I know you guys hate the slides, but several essential items, including but not limited to universal school breakfast and lunch, funding for English learners, per pupil funding for mental health and school safety, early literacy coaches, career and technical education programs, and assessments to be allocated on a per pupil basis. So this came out from the mission, okay? And by the way, under the House budget, we could do even more. We could do dinner, they could do snacks, they can fund any meals they want, because what our budget does is it puts it in place where the schools have the flexibility to use it on any of these things or other things. How important it is to invest in our K through 12 system. This is very important to notice. If you look at the governor's recommendation, the Senate's recommendation, and the House's recommendation, and Travers, you see this, which he's a fair journalist. The biggest one, education more than the Democrats do, more than the governor does. But yet we have a plan to put $3.1 billion into roads. So you do not have to pick between education and roads. You can do education and roads. You just have to cut out all the pork projects for the lobbyists and all the corporate giveaways, something that the Democrats are afraid or do not want to do. Excuse me. So hopefully the media will report that the House education budget is bigger. We actually spend more money on education but importantly, the House Republicans propose spending the most on education. That's why a lot of people like our plan and support our plan, because it spends more on education than the Democrats' plan. But we give them the flexibility to trust the local school districts instead of giving all the money to the lobbyists and pork projects that are donors to a lot of Democrat politicians. Norman Hertel say that there's no waste, fraud, and abuse in this state government budget, this is why the public doesn't believe them. Look at this. So the first column on these slides is going to be the last budget under Republican Governor Rick Snyder. And then the second column is the current budget under the Democrat trifecta. Now, you know that the voters were so outraged by what this Democrat trifecta did that they replaced 22% increase in that department since Dana Nessel became Attorney General. And the interesting thing about this budget is there's one line item pretty much for 90% of the budget called operations. So when, you know, the ultimate land secretary Anthony says that she's looking at every line in the budget, I looked at every line in the budget. I said, it's pretty easy if a whole department is basically one line item called operations. So what we need to do is really break this apart and look very carefully at a department like this that is in political quests. She'll lose all of those too. What, the next one? Look at this, technology, management, and budget. Now, if there was a black hole in state government, it would be this department. This is where all the IT projects live. These billions and billions of dollars of IT projects. Now, you guys remember the MySACWAS? This was the, you know, it was in the families area of DHHS where, you know, when we were dealing with all of the child services issues, and they built this billions and billions of dollars on MySACWAS, and it didn't work, and the caseworkers told us, and we had a lot of House Oversight Committee meetings on this, and they scrap it. And so we're looking very carefully at this budget for all the waste, fraud, and abuse. Also to rein in some of these out of control IT systems. Where's the next one? Do you guys have the next one? Okay, agriculture. So this is increased 38%, this budget under the Democrat trifecta. This is another great example of a budget just rampant with grant programs that is they create a bunch of fake employees. They call them FTEs. So essentially you ask for all of these positions that you can't fill, and then you work project it. And so what these departments are doing is they're squirreling away billions of dollars that they get allocated in their budgets and they don't spend, and they get to keep these. We estimate this is over $6 billion in state government that these departments are not spending, that they're being allocated, and they're just holding on to their accounts. One of the worst offenders would be this department, but there are many departments, whether to investigate businesses and investigate employers for you know, for all kinds of accusations, and it's out of control, and there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse there. Do you want to go to the next one? Look at this. Labor and economic opportunity, 92% increase under the Democrats. So if you look when Governor Snyder was there, it's about $1.2 billion. Under the Democrat trifecta in their last budget, it's $2.4 billion. This is a 92% increase in the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. that you're going to see in our upcoming budgets. There's going to be a lot of change to this department. This is one of the departments that has the most waste, fraud, and abuse in state government, is the LEO budget. So we're going to make major changes to that budget. We're going to end a lot of the corporate giveaways, including the SOAR program. We're going to eliminate most of the pork barrel spending in state government, and we're going to invest that money into higher priority $1 million budget into an over $1 billion budget with an increase of 107%, okay? Now, these are the same Democrats that are telling you that there's no way to fix the roads without gutting Medicaid or taking it out of schools. They failed to talk about a 107% increase in this department. And we're not getting results from this department. All we're Now, when Governor Whitmer got up at her State of the State and asked us to work on regulatory reform and permitting reform, I said, exactly, we'll do that, absolutely. And you see the Rules Committee under Bill G. Schuette putting together a report. In that report, we actually agree with Governor Whitmer on about 70% of her regulation changes. What was coming, but with this Lara report and our report, and then the additional permitting and regulatory reform ideas that the Rules Committee and Bill Schuette have, we're not going to need this extra money for the Eagle Department. So I think when you start totaling up these departments, what you really see is that we had the money all along to fix our roads. Remember when Governor Whitmer campaigned and said, "I will fix the roads"? She had the money all along, but instead of investing that and eliminate $3 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse and replace it with roads funding that will be permanent roads funding that will ensure that our local roads are fixed once and for all, it shouldn't be such a surprise to all you people. It can be done, but we have to set priorities, and our priorities are not to grow government departments. They're to make investments in roads and education and public safety. That was the last slide? Okay, so that could be fighting gun violence in these cities with the most violent crime now, but Senate Democrats are blocking that. And he applauded me for working with him on it. I'll just point out, that doesn't help Republican districts. That helps Democrat districts. And in particular, but I'll say that's okay, because if we're trying to lower the violent crime rates, that helps every. I think the Democrats in the Senate would be wise to look at some of the things he's doing and embrace him, because they're on the verge of losing a good portion of their own party because he sounds a lot more rational than they do. I mean, look at that press conference yesterday. Look at the contrast. You have Mayor Duggan putting out solutions, and then you have the other Democrats out there just attacking me and complaining about me. What is it that Gretchen Whitmer and Mike know is a protege of Abraham Ayash? We all know that. And Winnie Brinks, these people are leading the radical left, and so this fissure in the Democrat Party is what's causing this problem as we're trying to get a budget done. I hope all of the Democrats unify around Governor Whitmer and let her lead them, because if they do, we will get a budget done very quickly. We've known each other. We know how to make deals. Gretchen Whitmer to drag her into that room so we can get a deal. And I hope that we can get a deal, but you know, Winnie Brinks does not want to negotiate at the negotiating table with me. She doesn't know the budget as well as I do, and she doesn't think she'll get a good deal. So they try to put anyone else in there except for her. But ultimately, I hope Governor Whitmer drags her into the room and the three of us can sit down and make a deal. No, no. Yeah, Beth. Way down because of the last Democrat budget. One of the main things that we're trying to achieve in our budget, and if you looked at it, what we did was we put what they call boilerplate. We put rule in place. You must fund school safety and mental health with this money. So when I pointed out how the House Republican budget is bigger than any of the Democrat budgets, they're probably doing it for performance reasons. Yeah. Well, I think if you look at the guidance from the State Department of Education, which explains our budget, all parties are proposing funding school lunches. I mean, you know what I mean? So all of these things are being proposed by all the parties, except maybe the school safety and mental health. I mean, if you look at the budgets, you guys can put them back on the screen. All three budgets increase spending for schools, just the House Republicans increase it the most. And then if you look at the guidance from the Department of Education, they explain that we fund a lot of those things in our budget. It's just done in a way that is a little different than the establishment is used to. You know what I mean? So, but that's why they put out the guidance saying all parties do this. What Democrats are doing is they're relying on very minor technical things in order to try to stir up a lot of controversy, but everyone is proposing funding those things.
If I could change the subject, apologies. I think I asked this the other day, but just to reaffirm, you mentioned
Matt Maddock, who's been having lobbyists come to him for months into his office, telling him where a lot of this waste, fraud, and abuse are, and he's finding a lot of it. And I'll just point out, you know, I would use the Arts Council as an example of waste. I mean, you look at the Arts Council, they're funding barbershop quartets, they're funding glass blowing, puppet art. Apparently there's two different puppet art organizations in Detroit. They're funding both of them. When I started looking at some of these grants, I realized they're worse than the pork projects that the politicians but there's many grant programs all over government. So I think you look at that. I'll just use the most obvious example. When you look at the Attorney General's office, that's a very clear abuse. When you see an office dragging its political opponents into years and years of litigation with no end in sight, you look at entering lawsuits on behalf of the office when the state of Michigan is not even backing them on those lawsuits over and over and over. In this budget is Senate Democrats like Sarah Anthony and Kevin Hertel do not want budget transparency. They do not want us to show you what is in the budget in all of this pork spending until after we vote. And I don't think that's right. That's why what the House did is we put into place months ago required disclosures. If a politician is trying to shove our budget must have gotten a public hearing. And so we did that. And my hope is that's going to allow a lot of time for scrutiny so we can root out some of the fraud in these earmark programs. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And I think a proposal like what the Democrats have, particularly Anthony and Kevin Hertel, is if you don't disclose to the public what you're trying to shove into the budget until after the vote, you're going to continue to have the fraud. Yeah.
Well, now that you have these examples of waste and fraud, how long is it going to take you to adopt the budget?
Yeah. Well, I think that'd be a great opportunity. I mean, we talk about all of the great House bills that are sitting in the Senate. This would be a great opportunity. Now that the impasse is over, and you all saw I moved one of their bills yesterday, this Senate bill that we moved and got 100 votes on. The impasse is over. Why not take up ranked choice voting in the Senate, put it up for a vote? I've seen the polling on this. People in Michigan strongly oppose ranked choice voting. It's a very confusing process, and essentially it's yeah,
The last major shutdown that we had only lasted a few hours. So
yeah.
your plan is to at least get your budget done, delivered by September 30, and then pushing right up to that deadline shutdown. How long do you think it will take to get to a consensus budget after that? Do you presume that may take longer than a couple hours if it does shut down?
Yeah. Well, since we're putting together the perfect budget, it really should only take a couple of hours, honestly. We send it to them, they adopt it, we'll present it to the governor, something that Joe Tate doesn't know how to do. We'll present it to the governor. She could 2 weeks to get a deal. That's what I think. And
It seems optimistic though, with the kind of consternation that exists between you and Senate Democrats.
well, if they empower their leader, Governor Whitmer, I mean, this is a battle going on between two factions in the Democrat Party. The radical left, like this New York mayor candidate, Mondami, and someone like Gretchen Whitmer, who's trying to lead the Democrat Party in a direction of working with President Trump. And you're seeing that play out in this chaos on the Democrat side in these budgets. And so if the Democrats can unify and empower their leader, Governor Whitmer, we'll get a deal done in about 2 weeks, probably less. If they don't have a plan, then hopefully they empower Governor Whitmer and we'll get a deal done very fast. And, it won't be easy, but we'll do it very quickly.
The governor said no to, one-on-one negotiations between Justin and America, that it needs to be all of the quadrants at the table.
The quadrant, I don't know. We have the triangle. The triangle, they're calling it, which is Speaker Matt Hall, which me, Winnie Brinks, and Governor Gretchen Whitmer. The triangle. I could see the triangle meeting, but again, in order to get the triangle to meet, I really think we're going to need Gretchen Whitmer to drag Winnie Brinks to that conversation, because Winnie Brinks doesn't want to negotiate with me, because she knows that I'll win that negotiation. So really, if it's 2-on-1, I mean, I think if it's this is Winnie Brinks' opportunity to show her that there's another leader with the guts and the brains, but we're not seeing that right now. Yeah, go ahead.
See an updated budget from the Senate based on your numbers in order to negotiate? Is that something that you stand by, or are you still going to adopt the House budget since it's the perfect budget?
Right. That's a great question. So, the Democrats get up and they don't talk about what they want to do. They just attack me and they make it very personal. And that's been going on ever since I was Speaker for 8 days, and they sued me and they sued the House. And you guys all remember they tried to make it personal and serve me in front of the cameras. That failed, and they lost their lawsuit, and a lot of it was dismissed. Now we're still fighting in courts, but they're going to lose. They made it very personal. They sued the House. That's the first time in Michigan's history that the Senate has sued the House. That's really put this on a trajectory of difficulty. I don't think they should have sued the House. See, I'm smarter than them, and so I look at it and say, okay, if I need the Senate to get bills done, would I sue them? No, I wouldn't do that, right? But I'm more effective. So, and by the way, how do we know I'm more effective? I won the MERS Award for most effective Republican in the largest margin they've ever seen. I also won, the Newsmaker of the Year from Gongwer last year. I won the MERS Political Figure of the Year last year. I won almost every association award you can win this year or last year for my work. The Economic Development Person of the Year twice. So when I talk about this stuff, I know what I'm talking about. And then I had the highest approval rating of any politician, including Governor Whitmer, in the recent polling Epic MRA did. And we know they're the most reputable polling firm in the state. So just to go through, I know what I'm talking about. And in order to be effective, you shouldn't be suing the people that you're trying to get to pass your bills. You know what I mean? Now, just to kind of move forward on this, I think it'd be really smart for the Senate Democrats to propose a budget based on the real numbers. When we put a budget forward, our budget is going to be based on the real numbers. We're not going to overspend by billions and billions of dollars. That's what makes this negotiation complicated, is their budget is billions of dollars more than what we have to spend. That's what I mean when I say they have no priorities. So how do you negotiate with someone with no priorities? It's very hard, right? That's why they're saying, let's just do it the same as last year and just add 4% to everything. Well, the public wants us to get value for their dollars, and they expect us to eliminate the waste, fraud, and abuse. And they want us to direct it to more important priorities like roads, education, and public safety, and that's what the House Republican budget does. So I agree with you. They'd be very smart to revise their budget and make it based on the numbers we actually have. Yeah, to the dean. Act 51? No. I think that what you see going on from Democrats, okay? So what we've done in the road negotiations is we've found a landing spot where the counties, the cities, the townships are all in alignment, Republican and Democrat. When we had a recent House hearing in Kevin Hertel's district in Macomb County, you heard Mark Hackel, the Democrat county executive, his team testified in support of the House Republican roads plan. We've seen Warren Evans in Wayne County support the House Republican roads plan. I've even heard your mayor here in Lansing, Andy Shore, say positive things about the roads plan. So when you can get the counties, the cities, and the townships, Republican and Democrat officials behind your roads plan, why would you throw in a curveball at the 11th hour to totally, they call that a poison pill, Tim. You know what they do? They come in and they say something and it blows the whole thing up. We're trying to do policy that unifies people, not policy that divides people. And what unifies people is that every road, no matter where it is, needs more funding, and that's what our plan does. Well, I've met with a lot of the local mayors and the county executives, and what they're seeing is that the House Republican roads plan doubles or triples their funding. And so no matter where you live, if you're seeing that kind of benefit, that's why they're saying let's support the House roads plan. And I understand that. So no matter what, they need more money. And so what we're trying to do, and the reason that we haven't gotten roads done under Governor Whitmer, is because they're focusing on these very divisive subjects. What I did is put a plan together that unifies everyone, Republican and Democrat, and we passed it through the House with bipartisan support. So I think rather than trying to complicate it and blow it up by pitting communities against each other, we can unify behind a plan that Democrat and Republican elected officials support all over Michigan, including in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties. Yeah, Beth.
What are your thoughts on the governor drafting budget negotiations and how she will drag race
Oh, when is she going to Japan? Okay, yeah, I didn't know about that. How long is she there, do you know? Couple weeks, okay. Well, you know, I will say that the governor has taken a few trips during the budget conversations, and you know, I found her to be very available and engaged to talk to me when she's on those trips. So, you know, and one, you know, I saw the governor's office put out a report. They're like, and by the way, if you look at their report, do you notice? It says, I've talked to her 3 times, and these 2 leaders have talked to her 2 times. So even if you use that measurement, I've talked to her more than each of the Democrats have. But I've actually talked to her a lot more than those 3 times. Those are just the 3 times that are scheduled meetings. But I've probably talked to her over, I mean, probably 20 times during that time. Just so you get an idea. There's a lot of conversations going on in a lot of areas we agree. And if she's in Japan, I would expect that her and I will talk a lot while she's there too. That's one thing that I say very positive about her is no matter where she is, her and I talk very frequently and we're making a lot of progress. I can't speak to how that impacts Winnie Brinks. But yeah, that'll be very interesting to see how that impacts Winnie Brinks. Yeah.
You keep saying, you know, now and earlier press conferences,
Yeah, well, just to be clear, the House education budget has been sitting in the Senate chamber for some time, for many weeks and months, and I've kind of laid out that budget to you and why it's a good budget, and it spends more than any Democrat budget. It also empowers local school districts to have the flexibility to decide how to spend their money. And I give the example, it's like what the Democrats want to do is like, here's $100, you must spend it on transportation. And if the local district says, well, I can do the same transportation for $80, they lose the other $20. So by giving the local districts the flexibility, that will empower them to spend their money further and on more items than just the regulated and mandated items by the Democrats.
Well, but even a lot of school districts say that, well, putting it out that way is far from a perfect budget. And since half of it isn't done, it's not just about who's to blame for that, is you still don't have a budget on time. There are consequences with that. And you keep saying perfect budget when it seems like that ship has sailed.
Yeah. Well, and I'll point out, that's one reason why today Jamie Thompson has put forward a joint resolution requiring that if the politicians don't have their budget done by a statutory deadline, that their pay will be withheld or they'll lose their pay. That's one reason Jamie Thompson's put that forward, and why we're voting on that today is because if the Democrats in the Senate, if they had a provision like that in place, so if there was a provision saying that if the politicians lose their pay if they don't get a budget done by the statutory deadline, we would have got a deal done. I would have got a deal done by July 1. The problem was, without a policy like that in place, and I give Mike Duggan credit for coming up with the idea, but without a policy like that in place, the Democrats in the Senate walked away. They don't want to do a deal because there's no urgency. And Democrats would rather blame the Republicans than compromise on a budget. And they would actually rather shut the government down than compromise on a deal. And that's been clear going back to before the election, when Mallory McMorrow started saying there's going to be a government shutdown if you elect a Republican House. And that drumbeat has continued and continued and continued. They sued us. They never intended to do a budget on time. They just wanted to blame us because they're trying to win the next election. What the Democrats don't realize is they're not pushing people their way. They're pushing people in the Democrat Party, Mike Duggan's way, and they're actually hurting themselves. And so I think they'd be wise to work with me and Mayor Duggan and do a policy to stop the politicians from getting paid if they don't get a budget done on time. And this policy, if enacted by the legislature and then put on the ballot before the voters in the next election in 26, if that type of a policy is in place, we'll get a budget done very fast. And I'm going to need that because I'm going to be here another 4 years as Speaker after this. I don't want to go through any more of these budget crises where the politicians are not getting serious. I mean, you look at this, they want to spend days and days negotiating about the size of the table and what room we're in and what chairs there are. It wasn't until the very end where they would even talk about education. We would have a lot more seriousness and a lot more urgency out of Democrats if they had skin in the game and their paycheck was on the line. And that's why we're moving Jamie Thompson's joint resolution today. Yeah, Beth.
Would it be accurate to say, like, those budgets that you put up on the screen with the different things, the budgets they produce, are those what you guys are targeting for funds?
Some of them, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are others. I just didn't want to show you every single budget because I thought that, Tim was giving me a lot of crap for an hour-and-a-half press conference. I mean, if I showed you every one, I figure we'd probably be longer than that. Yeah.
Momentary change of subject. Could you share some of your thoughts on a bill or
What would it do?
Require the governor's permission for military to be deployed in Michigan.
Oh, I oppose that. That bill will never move in the Michigan House. You know, one of the things that President Trump has been doing is he's been restoring law and order across this country. And you look at the headline in MLive recently where the Detroit mayor credited President Trump for helping fight violent crime and lower violent crime rates in Detroit. If President Trump finds local governments and local politicians that are refusing to enforce public safety. I mean, imagine if Winnie Brinks became mayor of one of these cities and then refused to do something like the Public Safety Trust Fund. You know, you look at a politician like Winnie Brinks who's just sitting on $100 million that could go to violence prevention right now and cleaning up gun violence across our state. You know, when you start having very radical people like that in office, I don't think we should handcuff the president from sending in the National Guard if needed to restore law and order in these very violent cities. I mean, I was in Washington, D.C. recently, and I saw firsthand, they've got a big problem with violent crime, and so I think it's a good thing President Trump is helping them clean it up, and so for that reason, we would never entertain this bill.
And a follow-up related to the budget. You said that the budget would be done soon. We'll see it very soon.
Right.
Talk about division amongst the Senate Democrats. Can you talk about the next couple of weeks, what the plan is going to be to kind of break through some of these barriers to actually get it done now?
Yeah. Well, I pointed out how many of these departments have grown by 30%, 40%, even 106%. Overall, the state budget has grown 43% since Whitmer took office. And Whitmer had the money the whole time to fix the roads, but instead it was spent on growing government departments, giving the money to the big corporations like Ford, GM, and Goshen, and poor projects for politicians to buy their votes for these bills. But fortunately, we still have the money to fix our roads without raising taxes. We've passed a House roads plan that shows how we do it. We've passed an education budget that's been sitting in the Senate for weeks that actually wants to spend more money on education than the Democrats. So there's a lot of really good things going on. So I think that what we could do is we could get the Senate Democrats to put forward a roads plan, and then we can negotiate roads and education. I think that would be really good. We should give our kids the assurance that their schools are going to be funded, their parents, the teachers, the superintendents. There's no reason we can't do that now because there's an education plan from the House and an education plan from the Senate. Also, the House has a roads plan. So we can start with education and roads, and then we can work through the rest of the departments once we've put our final touches on identifying all of the waste, fraud, and abuse that's rampant in this government. And by the way, once we've identified it and eliminated it, it'll be easier in the future budgets because there'll be a lot less of it. Yeah. Welcome back, Mr. Eggert. Well, I think what Governor Whitmer has said is there's no budget until there's without a roads plan. So we're not going to have a final budget without a roads plan. So I don't anticipate that there would be a budget without a roads plan. So we're going to have a budget done by September 30th and a roads plan. Schools hopefully are going to be funded earlier than that. That's what we're going to try to do. So, you know, I mean, I think that you're going to see some of our budgets before there's a roads deal. Do you know what I'm saying? So you're going to see them, but I think that the final deal will all happen at the same time because Governor Whitmer and I have both said there's not a budget without a roads plan. And the Democrats should listen to her. They really should. I mean, she's much more popular than the legislative Democrats. They'd be smart to listen to her. Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things that I really like about our chair, Ann Bolen, first of all, she knows the budget better than anybody. and she knows all the numbers, and that's one reason why we're going to win the negotiations is because for those budgets that she's negotiating with Sarah Anthony, the ultimate Lansing insider, all Sarah Anthony cares about is protecting the lobbyists in Lansing. And Ann Bolin has a much superior knowledge of the budgets. And so that's one reason that we're going to win the budget negotiations, and that's why Sarah Anthony and Winnie Brinks don't want to get in the room with Ann Bolin and I, because we understand this stuff in and out much better than they do. And when you have superior knowledge of the budget, you're going to get a better deal. That's why they're trying to do this thing through staff, you know, because they think that evens the playing field, or through lower level people. But you know, I'd like to be in the room with Winnie Brinks and Governor Whitmer. I think Governor Whitmer is going to have to drag Winnie Brinks into the room. And I think we could get a budget done if Winnie Brinks empowers Gretchen Whitmer. Now, with Ann Bolin, you know, Ann, as we know, you guys know Ann, she's a very optimistic person, and that's one thing I really like about her. And you'd have to be optimistic if you're hitting your head against a wall over and over and over with Sarah Anthony, who does not want to disclose earmarks until after the vote, and is trying to protect every single lobbyist and Lansing insider up here. So I would be beating my head against the wall too, dealing with somebody like that. But because Ann Bolin is such an optimist, it works, okay? Now, as part of being an optimist, you know, she had a little bit of an optimistic view of the budget timeline, and I give her credit for that. I'm just saying that it's more likely that it's going to happen after Labor Day. So, all right, well, yeah.
That was the disconnect, that she's just more optimistic than you are?
She's a very optimistic person, and that's why I picked somebody. You know, when you're picking these people and you meet these subcommittee chairs, I mean, you start looking at people like Mike Mueller, how passionate he is about the state police. You say, you picked the right person for this job. Matt Maddock is the vice chair of appropriations and everything he's been doing to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. Ken Borton running the DNR. Nancy Jenkins Arno running Leo. You start looking at some of these people, even Greg Van Workum on Medicaid. We picked the right people for all of these positions, have the passion, and they understand their budgets so well. Well, we did that with Ann Bolin too. You got to have a little contrast, and her contrast is she's a very optimistic person, and that's why we work so well together. All right. Well, we'll see you guys on the House floor. Enjoy.